All right, we are live. Welcome, everyone. I'm Danielle Patterson, CEO of Family Office Access, and I'm so glad you're here for today's Lunch and Learn. We are not just talking about structures or strategies today. We are diving into the inner dynamics, the unspoken conversations, identity shifts, and emotional undercurrents that shape how wealth is experienced, transferred, and led within families and leadership teams. I'm especially excited about today's session because I have the privilege of getting to know both of our speakers in meaningful ways. Vera Anderson was introduced to me through a mutual connection, and she's made an impact that I ended up introducing her to my husband as he was transitioning out of his CEO role and into a new chapter. Her work around clarity, legacy, and reinvention is something I've seen firsthand, and it's incredibly powerful. And Amy Brodsky, I had the pleasure of hearing her speak at the recent DC Finance Conference in Chicago, where I was EMCing. You should have seen her. She had the entire room with her presence and energy. And really the depth of her experience made a lasting impression. So I'm really excited to bring this unique and deeply complementary perspectives into today's conversation. And I'm honored to share the space with them. So I'll introduce them each so we can kind of more formally learn about their background. But I just wanted to give some personal context about how I met each of these incredible women. So Vera, thank you for being with us today. Vera is the co-founder of Global Elements Consulting and a legacy mindset advisor to international founders and family office principals navigating exits, succession, and identity transitions. A former PE partner turned coach, she helps first-generation wealth creators align inner beliefs with generational impact. Vera chairs Tiger 21 Group in Tampa and brings global insight from living and working across 4 continents. Welcome, Vera. And next, I would love to welcome Amy Brodsky. Amy is the founder and CEO of Sky Partners, a premier performance coaching and advisory firm serving ultra-high net worth families, high-profile individuals, CEOs, and leadership teams. She specializes in navigating their most confidential and complex challenges, from boardroom conflicts to intricate family dynamics. With over 30 years of deep experience in negotiation, behavioral dynamics, and executive leadership spanning finance, family enterprise, and academia, Amy is a trusted advisor to some of the world's most influential families and individuals. Her unique ability to combine strategic insight with emotional intelligence drives transformative results in high-stakes environments. So excited to have you both here today. Thank you so much. So before I really dive in, I just kind of want to set the scene and hear from both of you a little bit more. I feel like those bios hardly even scratch the surface of the type of work and the depth of experience you have. So I would love to start with you, Amy, before we kind of dive in. Can you share with us what the turning point that led you to focus on the human dynamics behind wealth and leadership in the first place?
Sure. I love this question. Thank you. My mother, a successful executive coach, often joked that I was her first client at the age of 13. Instead of punishing me for my major misstep, she would say something like, "So tell me what led to your decision that made you jump out of the window last night and sneak out of the house. And how do you feel about it now?" So I started at a very young age learning. So she later earned her doctorate from Harvard Graduate School of Education, where she was a teacher's assistant to Chris Ardress, and he's one of the founders of organizational behavior. After earning my own coaching certification, I had the privilege of auditing her coursework and applying the foundational models that she studied, taught, and actually developed herself. So learning from my mom has been the greatest gift in the world, deeply rewarding personally and the foundation to my own growth. And then secondly, I've always been drawn to the deeper layers of human behavior, perhaps because I've struggled with depression as a teen and longed for meaningful connection in a world that felt surface level at times. So the depth and intuition and sort of inner attunement eventually became my strength. And I went on to spend about 20 years on Wall Street. And while working at the intersection of HR and M&A, I noticed a very troubling pattern. Employee relations, meaning discrimination and harassment, lawsuits, issues were escalating quickly into costly legal battles. And I, at the time, was known as a bit of a bull in a china shop. I didn't have a lot of patience for politics getting in the way of productivity. So I secretly began meeting with these employees who had lodged complaints and were at the center of these conflicts. And my approach was simple: treat them with respect and dignity, listen deeply, inquire into their position, and allow them to be heard. And I would ask things like, if life were perfect, what would be the best resolution for you? And time again, after a months-long battle between attorneys, people chose a reasonable option over litigation. And I helped them settle numerous cases at a fraction of the cost, and everyone ended up much happier, I think, aside from the attorneys. And fortunately, the divisional CEOs took notice and sent me to law school full-time at night, which was difficult.
Oh
But
my goodness.
yeah. So the story really just encapsulates how I spent 20 years navigating very high stakes world on Wall Street, leading mergers, resolving conflict, and managing team dynamics, not through, like you said in the beginning, traditional strategy or org charts or structure, but through deep psychological insight, etc.
Love that. I love that I feel I knew both of you and I still learn new things, and I love the journey and just how personal. I love the beginnings with your mother. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'd love to hear from you, Vera. What really shaped your path into this work that you do, and what continues to drive your commitment to it today?
I was reflecting on that, and I recently remembered a friend of mine and I were having a conversation in high school. And I told her, I said, I want to be an international executive. Mind you, in high school, you have no idea what that means. But the idea of working and living abroad and being involved in deals and kind of the excitement and adrenaline of it all, something about it always kind of drew me in. So by the age of 26, I was a partner in a private equity firm. We ended up doing over 300 million in transactions. By the age of 31, I was happily married and living in London and basically living the dream. I was still a partner in the firm. I had substantial amount of equity. We were looking to IPO in the next 18 to 24 months. So I was like, okay, I am coming up. I'm winning at this game of Monopoly of life. And I'm about to retire in my early 30s. This is phenomenal. And then everything crashed, right? If you guys recall 28, 29 or 2008, 2009 market crash. Yeah, so the rug kind of got pulled from underneath and quickly saw equity evaporate, business dissolve, and had to come back to the US, felt very deflated, felt like I failed. And then within 6 months of us coming back, my business partner of 8 years committed suicide.
Oh, wow.
So I now lovingly refer to that time as my first midlife crisis. But what it really taught me, and this is something that I share with my clients now, is that wealth is not just the money. And if you correlate your net worth to your self-worth, that's a very dangerous game.
Mm.
And so what I do with the clients now is I guide them through the components of wealth, right? There's different stages of wealth that we go through, and each one requires a different mindset.
Yeah.
If you're not able to navigate through those shifts effectively, you're going to keep finding yourself back in step one
Wow.
instead of feeling like you're growing and progressing. But the biggest joy I have to say for me of doing this work is actually seeing my clients' most important relationships and their lives change and transform in the ways that we haven't anticipated when we started the work. And I think that's the biggest gift and the biggest magic from what we do as coaches and guides to these powerful individuals, is to empower them to, create the bigger ripple in the world and make a legacy level impact.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Vera. That's just, there's so much experience behind the journey you've lived and the fact that you've made this your mission in life to help others through these tough transitions. And, we talk about wealth, and it means so many different things to different people, and probably different stages of your life. Wealth really it does mean something different. And I think we often really celebrate the financial milestones, but each of those milestones comes with these emotional realities, uncertainty and identity shifts, like you spoke of, pressure and conflict. And I'll start with you, Vera. What do you think? Why is this conversation right now gaining traction in the family office and founder world right now?
I believe that we have more access to data now, so we can look retrospectively. And the biggest statistic that's ringing in everybody's ears is 90% of families lose everything in 3 generations. And having that bit of information, everybody's wondering, well, what makes the other 10% so special? What are they doing differently, and how can I align with that? And I was actually talking to an estate attorney who works with a lot of billionaire families. And he said, one message that I try to convey to my clients is that the documents are the easy part. Your estate plan, your foundation, your tax strategy, that's the easy part. The hardest part is conveying the value and the purpose of your wealth. And to creating these really tangible connections with the subsequent generations to get them involved and engaged at whatever level and capacity that they're able to,
Right.
and then to be able to step back and allow them to lead. And so that requires a lot of self-awareness, because without it, you can't build the trust. You can't give other people power and voice for the fear of being triggered or wanting control. So
Right. Right.
that's probably why I'd say, this conversation is so front and center at this point.
Wow. Well, I'm so grateful that we're having it right now and that you're both here to share from all these insights. And I imagine, when you're running a business, you're running at a million miles. And so finding the time and the space to have that awareness, and just to have the conversations, it's so important. We need to make the time. And Amy, the clients, that you work with, how have they taught you that success doesn't always mean resolution?
Yeah. So just back to the other question,
Yeah.
I wanted to add on to the statistic that Vera mentioned,
Yes.
because not what's happening now is that, again, we've already talked about it's not investment strategy. It's the emotional unpreparedness and the unresolved conflict and this ability to have difficult conversations. And younger generations are no longer conforming to what I call sometimes patriarchal dominance. Having said that, as years go by, I get many more requests from founder-led businesses that are astute to the changing dynamics, and having constructive dialogue around G2 and G3 interests. And there are a couple statistics that I had wanted to mention from UBS in Campton, is that 72% of millennials say that they define success not by financial performance alone, but by purpose, impact, and relationships. So this is somewhat new. And 77% say that mental and emotional well-being is just as important as financial literacy. And over 65% say they are more likely to prioritize ESG, philanthropy, and purpose-aligned investing. So what I'm seeing is a significant shift. More and more founders are proactively engaging me to sort of lead, teach, facilitate meaningful family conversations around this, far beyond estate planning or succession. These dialogues now explore, along with G2 and G3, identity, emotional preparedness, purpose, roles, leadership development. So it's not about who gets what anymore. It can't be, because that's not what these new generations want.
Wow. Yeah. I love statistics. They don't lie. So thank you for sharing those.
Sure.
Powerful. Yeah. Well, I'll stay with you, Amy, and really talking about kind of just the emotional architecture of what we're not seeing. What conversations are we not having? I mean, the emotional dynamics just play out behind the scenes in families, and I'm sure you see it, not just families, but also, the high
CEOs.
level teams. And would you say that there are common misunderstandings or misconversations that the work you do really uncovers?
Yeah. So first, if you've seen Succession, you can imagine the drama. And I have to tell you, this drama comes from the inability most times to have these conversations. And truthfully, reality often rivals fiction, which is very sad. I mean, I've witnessed everything from explosive boardroom confrontations, a sister who permanently grounded her brother's private plane.
Oh
And
no,
even
you've seen it all.
a CEO getting caught in compromising positions. So I've supported families through these high profile divorces that made headlines and helped them sort of walk back the conflict with grace. But emotion runs deep in all families.
Yeah.
And when you intertwine wealth and legacy and identity, the responses can be outrageous. And sadly, most of all the dysfunction can be prevented if they learn the strategies of communication. Um, and I always say, for someone to become a client, it takes them a lot of courage. because you have to look at yourself and you have to work on yourself. And many people just can't handle to do that. Having said this, I've had many clients that simply have the drive and confidence to be able to look at themselves and reflect. But the common misunderstanding or misconversations that you uncover is that, I mean, I think everyone does this to some extent, is that we are so used to solving problems with a technical solution, not an adaptive one. So there's a theory developed by Ron Heifetz. He was at the Kennedy School of Government. And then in the chat, if you want to guess some of these statistics, but heart disease is a leading cause of death in the United States, and it's the most expensive chronic disease. So technically, we have spent a fortune mastering the surgery, and the success rate is 95 to 70%. That's the technical challenge. So if the success rate of the surgery is so high, why is it the leading cause of death? So feel free to add that to the chat before I give you the answer.
Oh, the suspense. Who knows?
I know. So a study of Johns Hopkins was done telling patients, quote, like, now your surgery is done, it was effective. You must change your behaviors. This is the adaptive component. Stop drinking, smoking, stop feeling stress. Really? You want us to just immediately stop feeling stress? Or you will die. This is the adaptive challenge that our society isn't used to working on. So the impact of not learning how to make the behavior changes can be potentially fatal. Guess how many people, percentage-wise, were able to change the behaviors? If you want, you can guess in the chat.
Oh, I want to see. I mean, I'm guessing just sadly very low, but let's see. Anyone have any guesses? Anyone in the audience? 20%.
10%.
Oh, crazy.
So all those other people, because we haven't spent time in society learning about our behaviors and how to adapt them and how to be more aware, end up passing away at some point. I mean, it's staggering. And 85% of family firms experience serious internal conflict. And then the last, it's just that, oh, and in business, employees spend a number of hours in conflict, and it ends up costing us $360 billion a year. So whether it's family, business, leadership teams, these unspoken emotions and unresolved tension causes major issue.
Wow. It's like we need courses in communication.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have a question from the audience. This is why we do them live. Thank you everyone for contributing. And Ron, thank you for being here. Ron would love to know, and you both are welcome to contribute, of course. What do you think the main reason only 25% of family offices make it to the second generation, 10% make it to the third generation, and 5% make it to the fourth generation? If someone has a large liquidity event, what are the first 5 things you would advise them to do?
Yeah. I think that the first generation wealth creators, if you look at the statistics, most of them do not come from stable home environment. Most of them do not come from a healthy relationship with money or healthy relationships with their parents or mentors, for that matter, if they have them. So they don't really have access to the full or visibility on a full life cycle of wealth. And this is something that I was going to talk about, is that you go through these different transition points. First, being a creator of wealth, right? You need to have this singular focus and drive to actually get to the point of success, where the money hits your bank account. As soon as that money is transitioned to you, maybe before that, you're concerned about tax mitigation. You might be concerned about, how do I preserve and save the money once it lands to me, so there's nobody attacking me, right? But once you have it, you have to become a great investor.
Mm.
And what does that require? You can't fall in love with a deal, and you have to be diversified, which is exactly a 180-degree shift from what made them the money in the first place, is that singular focus. And then if we're talking about legacy and multi-generational wealth and sustainability, then what you're asking these individuals to do is actually to let go of the control of their money while they're still alive.
Mm.
And just let that land.
Right.
Can you imagine you giving up control of all of your money while you're still alive?
When you didn't come from it, you earned that. It's powerful.
And you might still be chasing your number, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it might be. And
Not
most of the
done.
time it's fictitious, right?
Yeah.
So once you really understand that in order for you to successfully create that whole arc for multi-generation, you can't be just focused on step one. You can't be just focused on step two. You have to be focused on long term. So you're looking at, how do I come across as kind, compassionate, passionate, caring individual to G5 people and communities I will never meet in my entire lifetime. And I have no idea what's going to be happening at that point in life at the rate we're developing right now, right? So you don't even know what's going to be the norm, what the economy is going to look like, what the investment field is going to look like. So I'd say the important thing is, first, take a step back
Mhm.
and breathe,
Yeah.
and don't move into the next thing right away, and allow yourself to curate the support that you need around you to make these strategic and tactical decisions, not just for yourself, your family, and your wealth, but also going further into the future generations.
Wow. Powerful. Such good advice. And you imagine that's going to be hard to do. Someone who's worked that hard is wired. They have adrenaline, and to tell them just do nothing, I'm sure it's a battle that you help clients through, Vera, in your transitional work.
Well, it's not just do nothing. It's also teach and lead from behind, right? But allow the conversations to start, allow yourself to empower the next generations, and really be a mentor and the wise guide, rather than the CEO, the tactician leading from the front.
I love that. Do you see other blind spots beyond this, being able to look into the future in this way that you're recommending? What other blind spots do some of these founders go through in their major life or business transitions?
I would say it's just realizing that we're all human and we don't know what we don't know. And also understanding that you are going to have natural biases for self-preservation. So your natural instinct might not be what's the best thing for the family, for the legacy, for the community. It might be what would be the safest and best outcome for me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have, again, the support structure and a mirror to reflect to you, that's not what you ultimately want to create. You don't want to go small. You want to go big. So you want to have people in your life that hold that vision for you and help you to expand it.
Wow. And Amy, from you, the clients, the leaders that you're working with, I'm sure there's a lot of blind spots or even myths that they're telling themselves about control and leadership, and even what they're supposed to do next. What kind of blind spots or myths are you seeing in your line of work?
I would say, that it just comes back to communication.
Mm-hmm.
It's that, well, communication, and the fact that, I think I said it before, people have to be self-reflective if they want to be able to grow.
Yeah.
And everybody could use a coach or a therapist in many walks of life, because we have this internal voice that we never talk about. You know, upwards of 70,000 thoughts come into our head and out of our head a day, and most of them are negative. So if we aren't able to quiet the voice, which means doing a lot of work and understanding how our thoughts and behaviors affect our performance, you can't really move forward. You know, and I see in a lot of cases advisors coming in and they're just telling people what to do. And it's
Right.
like, these are adults. These are adults, and they know better internally what to do if they are given the space and they're asked the right questions. You know, so even with, you know, the question you asked before, Vera, I mean, a lot of what I would do is literally just start from the beginning. Okay. Or I guess it was Ron's question, you know, if
Yeah.
life were perfect, what would happen to me and my family? What matters most?
What does that look
What's
like?
meaningful to me? What don't you want to change? What do you want to change? What are your biggest fears as it relates to the event? And how do you want to handle it? What does the wealth mean to you? And then I think a big one for me is, especially if they're seen in the media, what's the dichotomy between you and how you feel about yourself and how you're seen, how the
Yes.
world views you, and how does that affect you? So lots and lots of questions.
Yeah. I love that. And I imagine, you know, you can lead them and you can guide them and you can say, okay, we need to communicate. This is what needs to happen. And you need to look in the mirror. But what happens when they avoid those hard conversations? And how do you get them back on track? Do you have to fire your clients if they're not willing to put in the work?
I just did
Yeah.
a big family. Yes, I did. Because so I was going to talk about this in a minute, but when I interview groups, not just individuals,
Right.
everyone has to simply buy into the process and to being open. And if it's a family and it's a stakeholder, and there's
Yeah.
even one, this was one out of 6 of them, um, they didn't want to do it. So you're
Mm,
stuck. Like you can't make somebody do this work.
right.
You know, conflict is inevitable, but avoidance is very expensive. And you know, what typically happens is negative emotions fester beneath the surface. And this is, all of us can think about this, especially if you have a partner. We think we're hiding our frustration or resentment. We're
Mm,
not. Most of us can feel when something's off in a partner or a team, and that unspoken tension becomes its own form of communication and dysfunction. So yeah, I could go on.
yes. I actually, this was a good one, and you kind of brought it up. You know, it can sometimes be one person. I've heard Ron speak about this in the past as well, just the ego of the founder. And so, Cody, thank you for dropping that question in the chat. How do you deal with the ego of the founder?
So you can have an advisor go in and tell them what to do.
Mhm.
That usually doesn't work. But if you are an exceptional coach,
Yeah.
you are going to find out if they even have the ability to do so. And if they don't, I've worked with families where I've just worked with Gen 2 because they've come to me and said, I still want to work with you. And then it's more of a discussion about how do we not allow the patriarch, our father, to affect our own peace and happiness? And what can we do to separate from that? Because you don't have control over somebody that does not want to do the work. You just don't. You have
Right.
to look inward and say, okay, what can I do differently? And
Mhm.
how do I set my expectations differently to be able to live in this world?
Yeah. Wow. And how about you, Vera? When you are helping people really do that reflection, how do you help the clients you work with realign their internal compasses?
I've developed a 5-step process that I put all of my clients through in the beginning, and it basically helps us discover all of the misalignments, all of the things that they think are on track that are not. And we don't look at just their business life. We look at it holistically. We look at the quality of their relationships. We look at the quality of their life experience, their health, their work, how they feel about themselves, how engaged they are in the community. And then often we're able to eliminate these misalignments and really redefine the goals that they have for their life, not based on shoulds and family expectations or other people's expectations, but really based on what this individual is driven to create. And then we're able to shift the resources, time, and actions into those directions. And that oftentimes creates incredible results. For instance, I was working with a younger gentleman. He was in early 30s, had a very significant real estate portfolio, first gen. And he came to me because he said, I was unhappy and I couldn't figure out why. And so as we started through the process, the first step is the discovery thing. And anyone in the audience, let me know if this resonates with you. We've discovered that one of his childhood beliefs is you have to work hard in order to be successful. Anyone? So seemingly innocuous statement from the parents that created this belief, but the way that it landed in him is work wasn't hard. Success wasn't hard. Making money was easy. So his time allocation was maybe 1-2 hours a day on his business that created all the wealth. So in order for him to feel like he was working hard and deserving of this success, he invested in toxic assets and toxic partnerships. So he felt like he expanded a lot of energy, which he did. He felt like he had to really work hard. He had to dedicate a lot of time to fix and save and do all these things. So that fulfilled that obligation or that belief that I have to struggle and it has to be hard. So once we identified this belief, we were able to eliminate it. And we were able to eliminate the toxic partnerships and relationships. And we were able to deploy all of that new energy, that time, and those resources into things that really made him thrive. So new investments that were aligned with his vision for the future, that were aligned with his vision for impact. The way he reallocated his time was also very intentional, so that it didn't feel like we've created a void that he now needs to fill with other activities that were not as intentional. So we were able to re-engineer his entire life and transition him from being very frustrated and angry to being somebody who was feeling alive. He started working out. He lost weight. He looked great. He felt great. And it really transformed his entire life in 6 months period.
That's incredible. All this childhood limiting belief that was causing him to just expand energy in the wrong area. How freeing that must have been. What an amazing case study. And I know, Amy, you do a lot with your clients in these high stakes environments. And I'm curious, I love Vera's 5-step approach. What kind of frameworks or tools do you use to, whether it's families or teams, but how do you help them build this emotional fluency?
Yeah, sure. So my role is really to create a safe, skillful environment where they can reflect and test assumptions and behaviors and work through it's challenges, but it's also opportunities. It's looking forward, like, how do I take this opportunity and make it as successful as possible. But no matter what, you always have to look at yourself first, which I've stated. If you don't understand why you react the way you do, it's impossible to co-create a healthy team or partnership dynamic. So it's that initial self-awareness, taking stock of their own emotions, thoughts, and behavioral patterns, and then actually walking through examples of what didn't go well and what were they thinking and feeling during the time. Because that very much matters, and is the reason why they make the decisions that they do, and take the actions that they do. I ask very direct, reflective questions, and then, as mentioned, I draw from research-based tools developed by these, pioneers of organizational behavior. So the first, which is basic, is intentional listening. We teach clients how to truly listen, not while preparing their rebuttal, but with curiosity and care. It sounds simple, but the moment we feel triggered, if you think about that right now, or the stakes are high, most of the listening disappears. So practicing calm and grounding presence is essential. And then I talk a little bit about when it's a team dynamic, balancing what's called inquiry versus advocacy. So in any hard conversation, it's important to balance speaking up, which is advocating for yourself, with genuine inquiry. If you are only advocating, it can risk coming across as domineering or dismissive. If you're only asking questions, it can actually seem passive aggressive or disengaged. So we teach clients how to do both of those. And then there's something called the ladder of inference, and I'll just explain it simply. It's a powerful model that helps people sort of slow down their thinking and avoid jumping to conclusions. We get a text from someone or someone doesn't text us back, and we come up with all these reasons why. And it clutters our brain, and then it causes us to act certain ways toward that person. Instead of jumping up the ladder and making the assumptions, you want to test the assumptions directly with that person. We never do that. But that is an incredible way to teach people how to communicate on a deeper level and actually be able to have a tough conversation. We're so immune to wanting to have a tough conversation, or even ask somebody, so what was going on? I hadn't heard from you for 3 days. Doesn't usually happen that way.
No.
And ultimately the goal is to sort of increase emotional fluency and reduce reactivity. I call it the space between stimulus and response. And if you have a partner and you think about something that they do on repeat, you have no space between stimulus and response. You're reacting immediately. And as a patriarch or a leader, that's not good. And as I said before, we're in our head way too often, and we are making decisions without even being conscious. So increasing your consciousness and slowing down and understanding how those thoughts are going, how you're going to react, is huge.
Wow. Yeah. I think about all the voices, all the noise, and really carving out that practice. That is so powerful. I know it's probably hard for you both to be able to talk, case specific, because I imagine your work is highly private in both of your instances. But Vera, I loved the example of, how that particular client, how you really did that transformational work. Do either of you have other examples? I'm not asking you to name names. I know that's not something you can do, but really just a moment or a story where you witnessed how your work really helped make this meaningful shift and help a situation become unstuck. That's what I feel. You just help that energy redirect.
Yeah. I can share another story. Typically, I find that my clients come to me because they either want to go deep and they want to do the inner work, and they know something's not working, but they don't know what it is. So they're ready and open to go through the process. Other times they just need to go fast. There's an event happening in their life. There's something that they need to get over the 90-day hump, if you will. So I had a client who was in his 50s. He was an executive, and he just was in a process of transitioning and starting a new job at a C-level. Used to be married, was divorced, had a child, a son, and he was just really looking for some support while he was in that first 90-day sprint, because there was some legacy management that was staying on that he was just not sure how to navigate around, and he wanted to have an external perspective.
Mhm.
So in addition to successfully positioning him for that 90-day, the initial 90-day, we were able to shift his mindset in a couple of areas. And again, not surprisingly, area of control came about. How do you control the situation? How do you show up in meetings and in these team environments? He also had a case of perfectionism. I don't know if anybody else can relate. So things had to be done a certain way. And so we were able to expand that and get him into a state where his collaboration skills were a lot more open and optimized for the new environment he was walking into. The backside of this, and this is the piece that I absolutely love, because typically people come to you with a goal, and it's typically work related, business related, even if it is succession related. What happens on the back end, because we do so much re-engineering, so much mind shift work around relationships and how people view themselves and people in their lives,
Mhm.
some of the unintended consequences, if we can call them that, were that this particular individual went from not speaking to his parents for 2 years to relaunching that relationship. And they were
Wow.
able to connect and kind of start over. His relationship with his son transformed from being very controlling to being very collaborative, and they got a lot closer. He was able to actually reduce anxiety medication that he was taking, because he just wasn't getting triggered by things. And obviously, I'm not a doctor,
Right.
disclosure, right? He did this with a support of his clinician,
Yeah.
but there are these things that you start experiencing in your everyday life that make things easier. And within a year of us working together, he actually ended up meeting his life partner and getting remarried. Uh,
Oh,
so
amazing.
he's a happy relationship. So I think that, even if you have a business focus, um, the benefit of opening up and facing your blind spots and getting yourself a guide who can navigate you through challenging times and give you that support and perspective are, there's intrinsic cost and extrinsic cost,
Wow.
and value as well. So I think it's, you're giving yourself such a gift um, by being able and willing to go on the journey.
Wow, indeed, and you have to be brave, you have to show up, but my goodness, how transformative. It's just like a ripple effect through all facets of life. That's incredible. Amy, do you have any stories without needing to name names, but
Of
I mean, it's so
course.
powerful to hear this. Yeah.
Um, I wonder if I should do a corporate one. Do you want corporate or family?
Mm, your choice. It's all relevant. It's all,
All right, I'll
awesome.
do the family one, and then if you want the other one. I'm very proud of this work, and I have to say that it is, because of what my struggles, it feeds everything that I, sometimes feel as if I'm missing, which is that deep connection, when I was younger. So I was working with an older father, and this is not usually what you see. And he was struggling with some pretty deep emotional wounds. He had a therapist, but he needed to sort of think forward about solutions. Um, and these wounds were caused by his son. It was years of gaslighting, controlling, verbal threats, of saying he was going to kill himself, and even some physical abuse, some pushing. And this all happened around the son asking for things like, you know what I mean? I know I have my inheritance, but I need another 20 million for, so the father was so afraid of saying something wrong or not saying yes every single time that he just kept feeding the engine.
Yes.
And he got to the point where he was, I mean, pretty depressed, I think scared, really stopped living life. So we started working on him. Like I said, could you forget about your son for a minute? Because with the therapist, it was just all about this interaction. And I
Mhm.
just said, who are you in all of this? And um, what do you want for your life? So we sort of started with who he was and what was going on for him and what mattered to him, because he had lost such confidence and he felt
Mhm.
terrible because he felt like it was his fault. So anyway, over a number of years, he learned how to take steps very slowly to distance himself a bit from the son and not say yes all the time, but in a very nice way, and was much more calm. And when the son escalated things, he would either walk away, but we developed guardrails. And they were teeny at first. And he just became incredibly confident and got to the point where, the answer was no, but I love you. I'm so afraid the son would never love him. And it was unbelievable. The son finally realized that that he couldn't manipulate him anymore. So
Oh,
today their relationship is much more stable. And most importantly, my client is self-sufficient now and grounded and does not allow his son to trigger him, and has done some good help to his son.
such important work. The son sounds like a monster, so thank you for helping empower this man. That's terrible that this goes on in families, but
Well,
amazing.
what's terrible is that he acted like a monster. That's the label, but
Mhm.
he had his own things that happened to him with
I'm
the
sure.
mother. So it's just a very complicated world. And again, this is not just related to families of wealth.
Yeah, exactly, and it's like we have to address the issues. We have to break this cycle because it will continue to show up in different ways, and if you don't, look in the mirror, ask the hard questions. And I like that the question you seem to ask is, what does a happy life look like? What do you want? And it makes them go back to the why.
Yeah, and sometimes like it's funny with powerful people that say they want to do the work. Um, Advisors don't work because
Mhm.
they're never going to do what you tell them to do. You have to ask the right questions to get them to say what's not working because of what you're doing, but they have to figure it out themselves or they have no interest.
Mhm.
So,
Fascinating. I think we have time for your corporate story if you would like. I definitely I have another question I want to ask of both of you, and I can either give you more time for that or you can quickly share the corporate side. And it must be interesting. I mean, both facets, you probably see just a
yeah.
lot, full range.
All right, I'll try and do this quickly. Big merger. The way that we found out about it was a Fortune 500, two Fortune 500 companies. Okay, so big merger. We found out about it in the Wall Street Journal, and all my bosses, like I was the most junior person on the leadership team, they found out in the Wall Street Journal that they were potentially losing their job. Okay, so they went into complete aggressive mode. They wanted nothing to do with the other team, even though it really wasn't the other team that had allowed that to happen, to leak in the Wall Street Journal. So I ended up doing a lot of work with them without the other team. At some point, we had to merge. And we
Yeah.
had to have facilitated conversations, and they had to let go of, I can't believe this. We just found out we're all fired. So anyway, I did a lot of deep work with them. And then I actually went to the other team, to the board, and I said, I don't want to wait. Like, you can work out different, parts of the deal, but I want these teams to come together. And they were sort of like, you do? And I said, yeah, because we don't know what they all want. Some of your team might want to leave, some might want to move to another, so anyway, long story short, I think it was the first time that I had ever been able to, I was somewhat young, lead this transaction and get these two teams together and actually get them laughing a little bit. And we were able to figure out, except for one person, what someone wanted to do and allow them to do it. So it was wonderful.
I mean, I just try to imagine, it's when there is no communication, when there's no transparency, it's just going to breed fear and resentment. And I love that you were able to just convince them to do otherwise. And I'm sure that was a complete game changer for them. Yeah. Well, I hate that, we don't have forever to talk, and I would love to just, I kind of was like, yeah, we're going to need a version 2 of this for sure. But I'd love to ask you both, if you could leave the audience with one mindset shift or takeaway, something that they could start doing or reflecting on today, what would that be?
I would say focus on connecting first before you bring in facts and figures into a conversation. Find what you have in common with the person sitting across from you. What are their goals and dreams? Like Amy was saying, what is it that they're aspiring to create? Because if you can land on the same page, then you're a lot more open to collaboration and exploration, and it's not as threatening. So I'd say that's the first. And then I just wanted to ask everybody, just notice how you're feeling in your body after this conversation, right? Are you feeling tightness? Are you feeling more openness? Because our bodies are an incredible instrument that tell us when something is misaligned or something's not working. So if you are feeling tightness around a certain area of conversation, explore that. That's your key, that you might be getting triggered. There might be some fear. There might be some uncertainty that you need to explore. Wow. So I'd say give your, listen to your body and your intuition, of course.
I love that. Learning to tune in. We are full of power and wisdom when we know how to tune into it. Incredible. And what about you, Amy?
I would just say life is fleeting. I almost died on 9/11, lost my dad. I mean, we all have these times in our life where maybe we stop and second guess some of our choices. Do not wait. If the relationship matters enough to you, you find the confidence, you learn the tools, you break the cycle and have a constructive conversation. I mean, the divorce rate's 50% or more due to an inability to communicate. So take ownership of your own feelings and thoughts and make it happen. Self-growth is crucial.
Wow. Powerful. And I think I have to agree that, when our loved ones leave us and go on to that next life, they leave us with grief, which I do think is an amazing, beautiful emotion. It shows that we love. But there's a gift in reminding us of just how fleeting this life is and how it's a gift and we're here and we can make a change, but you can't wait. You have to act. And yeah, every day is an opportunity. So incredible. Well, just a huge thank you to both of you. I think that's such a powerful way to end our conversation. And I can't thank either of you enough for just sharing your expertise and such powerful work that you're doing. I mean, it must be so rewarding to see the difference you make in the lives of the clients that you help. And just, yeah, thank you for being here and giving so generously to, this conversation, but to all of our audience. And I know everyone's streaming in live from LinkedIn, and they can obviously find you there. Are there other ways that people can follow your work and stay in touch and learn more?
LinkedIn, I would say, is probably the best platform for me. You can also send me an email. I'd love to hear, what's coming up for you as you're processing all of this information, and any insights that you might have. My email is popped into the chat, so feel free to reach out and let me know how you're doing, how you're feeling, and connect on LinkedIn.
Yep. The same for me. And if you want to chat, I'm happy to do so with the audience that's here today.
That's incredibly generous. Thank you, guys. And a quick reminder, today's Lunch and Learn is brought to us by Family Office Access. So if you're exploring how to connect with aligned family offices, you can register, get a free trial, and as a thank you for being our guest today, we offer a 20% off promo, Live 20, through the end of the month. And we hope that you will join us for our next session. We'll be meeting again online August 21st, featuring David Homan and Noah Askin, who actually just yesterday launched their book, Building Purposeful Relationships in a Tribal World. I just got my copy and I can't wait to dive in. So wishing everyone a wonderful day, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, Danielle.
My pleasure.